Hello and welcome to the Employer Content Marketing Pod. I'm Chris LeCount-Harwood, your host of the podcast about employer marketing content. When the competition to attract and retain talent is fierce, organisations can't rely on just promoting their vacancies. They need to do a lot more than that. Enter employer content marketing. Joining me will be guests from inside and outside of the world of employer marketing. Let's get on with the chat. In this episode, I chat with Nick Francis. Nick wrote a book called The New Fire: Harness the Power of Video for Your Business. Nick is a communications strategist, a consultant, and a filmmaker. He's co-founder of Casual Films, who are one of the world's first specialist online production companies. They've worked with a whole host of companies such as BMW, Facebook, Red Bull, Rolls-Royce, Adobe, Google, and Marriott. So he's a great person to chat with about video. And his book that we'll be talking about covers off the why, what, and how of creating great video. So I hope you enjoy listening to this as much as I had chatting with him about it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I wanted to use this episode to talk about video. We know that there's, the popularity of video. Cisco has come out with great stats around video. Latest one being 82% of the world's consumer internet traffic will be video by 2021, and that's next year. So that's a really big deal. And also, YouTube, 500 hours of video uploaded every single minute. I'm sure that was only 300 hours only a few months ago. And of course, you got the rise explosion of TikTok, which is heavily focused on video, and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat having video as absolutely front and center of their offering to their users and therefore advertisers. So yeah, I thought video was a great place for this episode for a very rainy London. So we've got Nick Francis. Nick, I've known for a good few years now. I think we judged on the Rads in 2016 on the judging panel.
We did, yeah, way back when. Yeah.
And Nick's recently written a book called The New Fire: Harness the Power of Video for Your Business, which is an excellent topic. And I've read the book cover to cover and a real page turner. So let's crack on. Let's just start off with maybe just a
good man, Chris.
Nick, well, we can go from there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you. We've had our paths have crossed several times over the last few years, so it's great to be here and be sharing some ideas today from what is quite a sunny San Francisco. I hate to say it. It's funny, my smugness at living in California increases in direct proportion to the difference in weather between London and San Francisco. So reasonably smug right now, but yeah, no, it's video is absolutely the thing. I think because for a number of different reasons, really, but it just allows you to communicate emotion and a message in a way that just has impact, and that's why it's so successful. But anyway, I don't want to jump ahead, so let's crack on.
So yeah, can you tell me a bit about yourself, a bit of your background, and what got you to this point? What got you to sunny San Francisco?
Sure. So I've always been interested in images and photography. I wanted to be a photojournalist when I was younger, and then I studied television journalism because I saw it was the sort of combination of the written and the visual narrative. And I didn't go into being a war journalist, which is what I wanted to do when I was a teenager, but news and sort of experiencing human life, I found that video was just a really good way of kind of getting out and seeing people and seeing the way people lived. And so I started at BBC News, BBC Breakfast News, doing some production there. And then a friend of mine, Barnaby Cook, and I, we were friends from university, decided we were going to do this thing called the Mongol Rally back in 2006. It's a rally for rubbish cars from London to Mongolia. And
wow.
yeah, it was an adventure.
I bet it was.
Yeah. And a terrible, a 1987 Mini is a terrible place to make films. But we
That's a
didn't.
surprise.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, the hilarious thing is we didn't really appreciate that until we were somewhere in Belgium. But anyway, so we made a series of diary films for Expedia, the travel website.
Okay.
And this was back in 2006. It was shortly after YouTube was founded. So it was before people really thought of the internet as a medium for video. In fact, I had a conversation with a brand manager. I don't know if global FMCG company, absolute household name. And they said to me, I said, you should have a video on every single one of your web pages. And they looked at me and said, why on earth would I want a video on my website?
Wow.
Which, it's kind of amazing because it really shows just how far video has come and just how explosive that growth has been. I
bet actually though that maybe some people might still say that, going, well, why should I have video? Just across my website.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, because I think when you're kind of in amongst it, you can really feel like this market's moving so fast, and everyone is just so clued up nowadays, and it's so hyper competitive. But you know what? Like, it doesn't move as fast as you think it does, and like, of course, you want to keep up with things. You want to make sure you listen to good podcasts and you read industry blogs and industry magazines and things, and make sure you talk to people. And maybe read the odd book, but ultimately doing that will keep you up to date with what's going on, because there are still people who are kind of going, oh, maybe we should do video. Anyway, we came back, we realized that the internet was this massive medium for video, and so we set up a company to continue what we'd done for Expedia, really, because we had this global brand as a client, and we had a couple of cameras and a fairly battered laptop, and we thought, well, if Expedia will buy films off us, then surely other people will. After a few sort of fits and starts making backstage videos for bands, we ended up making a film for WorkComs. We went in and saw Mark Hawley there, and he gave us a shot on an animation for the NGDP, which was lucky enough to go on and win the best work at the Recruitment Advertising Awards in 2009.
I remember that. Yeah. Goodness.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. And so, and it was kind of when video was only just sort of really dawning for the recruitment marketing industry. And, there we were, we'd made this animation, which, won the sort of the top award in the industry, if you like. So, everyone wanted to work with us, and the company grew fairly rapidly, and we discovered things like spreadsheets and all the stuff which really helped to make a company run. And I think we sort of professionalized at a run. We then won the recruitment the RAD award, best work at the RADs again, in 2011. For a film for Thames Valley Police recruitment film that we made with Tribal. That kind of like cemented us and our kind of focus on recruitment marketing and employer communications more broadly. And that then meant that when we set up in the US, we had a very clear offering. New York in 2011, and then West Coast of the States in 2017. And here we are. I'm sitting in San Francisco. We've got an office in LA, office in New York, and London, and then we've got a presence in Amsterdam. So it's
you guys have been going great guns, haven't you?
It's been quite an adventure. Yeah.
And amongst all that time, all that business, you've managed to find time to write a book as well.
That's right.
I find amazing. So tell us a bit about the book. What is it, and why did you want to?
Sure.
Why did you write the book?
So, I mean, the realization that there was a book there to be written came when I went out to Switzerland to pitch to another sort of global FMCG company to their sort of pet foods division or pets division. And they had some amazing stories. They take pets into hospitals to help with, because they've been shown to improve convalescence rates for sick children. They're all allowed to bring their pets into the office. And, seeing this as a sort of content marketer, I was just like, this is gold dust. Like, you guys should be singing about it. You should be, sharing this and singing about it from the rooftops. And they said, and there were 40 people in the room. And at the end of it, one of the senior members of the marketing department came up to me and said, Nick, we 100% agree with you. You are right. Like, yes, this is gold dust. But every time we take an idea to the finance director or to the people who ultimately hold the purse strings and are in charge of the sort of strategic marketing, they say, no, we need to open on the logo. We need to have like scripted lines of, the housewife saying, I always buy this pet food because, Fido loves it. And it just felt like there's such a disconnect there, because there's been this huge kind of revolution, if you like, in the way that we can all communicate. Like, everyone now has the ability to effectively create their own broadcast channel. Yeah. And you see that on YouTube with kids making millions and millions of pounds out of the content that they share. And it like, there has been a drastic shift in the means, and therefore there has to be a drastic shift in strategy. And it just felt like, a lot of the practitioners that we were working with directly understood it, but the people above them, the kind of senior executives, it sort of happened after their watch. And so they dragged their feet about it. It just felt too risky to them to be creating projects which didn't do what sort of traditional marketing did, which said, we'll make your whites whiter than white, and, always work with this brand or that brand because it's the best. And in a world where your audience are more empowered than they've ever been, that approach just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I've seen that over the years where it's, well, it's about our brand, so therefore we need to get the logo in there.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. Oh God. I mean, there are a number of projects oh, sorry, Chris.
No, we need to sell the product. So therefore we need to focus on the product, because ultimately that's what we're selling. I've heard similar conversations, time and time again. Product, course, or job vacancy.
Completely. And it's like, and we traveled all over the world, on projects with scores, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds spent on them. And you share these stories, you play it back to the client or to their boss, and the response quite often, and I think people are getting a lot better at this, but like quite often it'll just be like, can you make the logo bigger? And you're just like, what? I mean, yeah, but also, come on. Like, it's like, it's sort of, it just goes over their head. So anyway, sort of long story short, I felt like there was the opportunity to write a book which would help people to educate people in senior roles around like why video work. And so when I sort of started writing it, I wanted to like share some of the sort of the brain chemistry and how that is affected by consuming video, and then go right through to like actually how to do it. So, how do you write a brief? How do you find great stories and tell them? How can you set a budget? I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible.
Definitely, when I read it, it's a great body of work, and I think it's split into two nice halves, which is the why and the what, and then the how. I can imagine it's should become a bit of a Bible for a bit of a sidekick to anybody who wants to do more video. That's for sure.
I hope so. And it's been really useful. When we're talking to a client and they want to understand how to write better briefs. and you can just say, sure, there you go, read chapter 5. I think it's chapter 5, but yeah. And so, yeah, it's just, just trying to increase the level of understanding around what is such a powerful business tool now.
See in one of your chapters, chapter 1 actually, you've got a quote from one of the big names in marketing, Seth Godin. There's marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories you tell. Why did you put that quote in there? Why is that an important quote to make such a focus on?
Well, I think stories are the way that human beings process information. So the reason the book's called The New Fire is that about 400,000 years ago, when we first harnessed fire, if you like, that enabled two things to happen. Firstly, it allowed us to get far more nutrients from our food, which allowed our brains to grow, because brain is like a highly nutrients intensive activity. Like brain growth is incredibly nutrients intensive. So we were able to get more from our food, but it also allowed us to lengthen the day. So but when you don't have fire, when the sun goes down, you pretty much have to go to bed. And people who've studied the last hunter-gatherer societies have found is that during the day, people talk in very sort of specific terms. So it's all like very action oriented. The wildebeest is over there. Go and make a fire. Go and look after that. Do it. Whereas in the evening, people talk in far more or far less literal terms. So they talk far more abstractly. And so what that meant was our brains were growing at the same time we were able to construct sort of abstract narratives. And so this idea of kind of like A plus B equals C is like, that is how our brains work. So like storytelling in itself is so fundamental to the way human beings work. And so, when you bring that back to a business context, if you can tell, like one of the things that I've always loved about video, particularly from an employer communication standpoint, is it takes things which are which can be quite intangible in their nature. So things like culture and what it feels like to start your first day on a new job, or what it feels like to go into an office where everyone welcomes you and promotes great thinking and great ideas and creativity.
Or you just lost you for a few seconds there, but
oh no. I was just gassing on about like making intangible subjects tangible.
Yeah.
So quite often we'll make a film, or more than once, certainly in the last sort of 15 years, we've had people who have come to us and said, look, we've gone and we've made a film with them, and they said, look, I've been doing my job for the last 20 years. My family have never understood what I do, and yet I just showed them a 90-second, 2-minute video, and they're like, "Oh, we get it, sure." And that is one of the great powers of film. It's just to encapsulate intangible ideas and concepts like that.
And what's from an employer marketing perspective, what is a good story in your view?
So a good story, I think, is one where you need to strip away as much artifice as possible. And this is kind of where there's this kind of disconnect between the traditional marketing and like where modern content marketing really needs to be, is that there's always been a kind of like slight tendency to control feel like you need to control the message. And a really great story is one that just is communicated really unfussily, and which just resonates with the audience. It reaches the audience on a level which is just so much deeper than what traditional marketing could ever have done. Yeah, is that really? Yeah. So, I mean, I always say, like, I think it's important to understand your audience and understand that, like, the things that are going to resonate for them. And I think too easy to, like, one of the sort of downsides of the kind of, in inverted commas, democratization of video and the fact that, like, it's so ubiquitous and so accessible is that people tend to just sort of rush into making videos. I think it could, it can be really valuable to understand, like, go and talk to your, if you've got some like graduate employees, or some really great interns, like, go and talk to your top people and understand what was it about the way that you communicated, what was it about your company or the job role which really attracted them. And then once you understand, and this is not rocket science, once you understand that, then you can start to build out you can start to say, well, actually, how do we communicate stories around those concepts?
Absolutely. There are definitely, in any organization, there are at least one person, one employee who absolutely lives and breathes what the company's about. And they have lots of great stories, don't they?
Completely.
I've often found, certainly kind of in the beginnings of my career, being involved in video projects were actually some of the best content we were getting from interviews was the stuff that was between the questions.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you've got this little nugget there, and you focus on that, and then you have this amazing story that just becomes a powerful thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of, it's that sort of, it's the moments between. It's why I always like to. I mean, not that I make films quite so much anymore, but we always try to turn the camera on before the person sits down.
Yeah.
And I also quite like to, you have a conversation. Like, I think it's always better if you don't say, okay, roll the camera. You just, I think as a director or a producer or whoever's asking the questions, if you just have an understanding with whoever's operating the camera to say, look, let's just roll it. Person sits down, you can have a chat, shoot the breeze, and then just, like, almost seamlessly go into questions that you need to ask. Because then what that does is it stops people from having that, okay, we're recording now. Oh gosh, what did I think about the things I was going to say? And it kind of all goes weird, which is it's one of the reasons why, some of the worst people to film are the most senior, because they have, like, far more pressure or they feel far more pressure to stay on message.
And they want it to be perfect as well. And that, can add extra pressure on their shoulders, can't it?
Completely. Yeah. And then they freak out, and then you kind of, you just inject the artifice again, and, like, and it just sort of gunks up. We had a project actually which we did for a big insurance firm, and it's not recruitment marketing, but I think there's sort of relevant themes here, which is they had this insight that by providing car insurance, and this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but humor them. By providing car insurance, they allow family life to happen, because family life happens when the family's in the car together driving.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to create a series of films around that. Now, they gave a big advertising agency a couple of £1 million to go and make this big film, and they shot it on cinema lenses, and they got sort of professional actors in, and it was all beautifully lit, and it was just horrible. It just felt so, like, forced and stayed, and it just didn't work, because people know, like, you have a sort of gut feel of what family life is like, and it just felt fake. And then say again.
Too pricey.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, it's massive. And then they, I think they pulled it after like a week and a half because it was a laughing stock. Anyway, then they gave us, not £2 million to make the below the line versions. And with these, we just said, well, look, we just need to get out the way. So we set up some GoPro rigs in family cars with some microphones. The driver, who was like the mum or dad, had an earpiece in, and the director and the producer and the sound recordist drove along in a car behind them. And the director would just feed them stuff to talk about. So it's like, can we talk about when little baby Sarah was first born? Can we talk about when you first went to the safari park? Can you talk about, last Christmas? And then, then the conversation just happens. But because we removed ourselves and removed as much of the production from the process, from the interactions, it just felt so authentic. And authentic is such an overused word, but like it just felt so sort of honest. And because of that, it just was fabulously successful. And then off the back of it, we were approached by YouTube in London, who were like, how, because the view completion rates on the videos were so high. They were like, what did you do to generate these incredibly sticky videos? And yeah, it's just, it's get out of the way and let the story tell itself.
I suppose that's the challenge, isn't it? I think you talk about it in the book about budgets, massive budgets and big teams can get in the way of a good story. It just goes to show that, you don't necessarily need massive budgets to be able to actually tell that story.
No. I mean,
that's a lovely example.
Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes there's sometimes there are things that just do cost money, like to do complicated animation. Like long periods of complicated animation costs a lot of money. To do big crane shots and shoot light buildings and stuff so they look lovely costs money. It just does. But technology is getting to a point where it's really bringing the cost of that stuff down. And I've been lucky enough to make films with over 100 people on set, and I've made films with just me and a camera operator. And sometimes, and I'm frankly, as director, I prefer to work with a team of 2 or 3 or 4 over 100, because you can't, with 2 or 3 or 4 you can sort of follow the magic. You can follow what's happening and you're super flexible. Whereas if you've got 100 people on set, we were shooting and I was like, the light is just perfect on that hill over there. Can we move over there? And the producer was just like, you can't be joking. And I was like, it's 100 meters. And he's like, that's like a 2.5 hour unit relocation to go and move and shoot over there. And I was just like, okay, well, it's cool having a catering van, but this is ridiculous.
Brilliant. So it's actually on, so you imagine we've got a budget holder who's, they've got a very relatively limited amount of budget to spend. They've got, things they spend money on typically, and the business is comfortable doing that. They may do a little bit of video, but there's something stopping them for doing more video. What is usually the sticking point, and how do they get past that sticking point?
I think the numbers in isolation can be quite scary. And I think also, as an industry, because it is so accessible, there's a lot of charlatans. Anyone can make a video for you. And if you spend a few grand and get it wrong, that's really annoying. And and I think from a sort of video production standpoint, I think as an industry, we've been guilty of taking the money and running, and what I mean by that is we are creating business tools. We're creating tools which help business people to get to achieve their goals, right? And I think as an industry, people go into video production because they love making films and they want to be Steven Spielberg, but they just happen to end up doing recruitment videos for a bank. And I think we've been guilty of just sort of taking the money, making the films, and then when the client goes, oh, it's not really working, or nobody's watched it, we kind of go, well, you asked for a film and we gave you a film. And I think where we're moving to, and certainly some of the work that you're doing, Chris, is around going, well, actually, let's take on a bit of the problem. So rather than just going, hey, you want a film, here, have a film, it's a case of going, okay, you're trying to recruit tech savvy grads who live in the north of England. Okay, well, what are their frames of reference? Actually, how can we use video as an effective tool to overcome that challenge? I think, like, you know, as an industry, now that we're sort of growing up a bit, to take on some of that, to own a little bit of the challenge, we should hopefully give people a bit more confidence. But yeah, you know, I think one of the sticking points is that historically we haven't done that. You know, and there's, you know, because it's such a disparate market as well. I think you know, there's nothing quite as scary as choice. And so, yeah, you know, there's 1,000 different ways you can get your video made. So yeah, you know, it's sort of, you feel like there's kind of a paralysis to it.
I think definitely it's around, you know, looking at I'm a big fan of piloting, and, you know, actually doing quite a few of those, and actually be in a certain constant state of piloting, perhaps, where actually, you know, you are starting out small, and just making sure that you're kind of making the most of that shoot time, so that actually you're not just getting that 90-second edit. And I think actually that goes to what you're talking about in the book about making sure everything is briefed in the right way, thinking about distribution channels and thinking about the audience, thinking about ultimately what you're trying to achieve out of it. And it made me laugh, actually made me chuckle when you said that there's been in the book, there's times when you've been involved in projects and someone asks maybe halfway through client side, so why are we doing this? You know, so starting off right is obviously, and well, what can seem like an obvious thing, but can be forgotten in the business of life. So yeah, I'm a big fan of, as you say, you know, getting the brief right, but also just starting out with something, making sure it's done right, and then build from there by using the massive amounts of data that we do have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, you know, it can be hard. Like, you know, if you've not made a film before, you know, it can be really hard to not to sit down and really think about, like, you know, what you know, what's it going to look like, and, you know, who might feature it and stuff. You know, like, which is why I think, as kind of, you know, professionals with an understanding, it's important for people like, you know, you and me and you know, and Casual and you know, people across the industry really to sort of to hold people's hands and go, okay, well, look, what are you trying to achieve with this? And then, you know, and work back from that. You know, but yeah, like, no, it is incredible how many times people, you know, I mean, literally like hundreds of thousands of pounds on films that are just like, you know, you get to the end and people are just like, what, sorry, what, I don't think we're ready to make this film. You're like, are you joking? We just spent 9 months on it.
And also, another thing where you said, is it, you know, video gets produced and it's put onto website, and then they go, not many people have seen it. You know, that thing of, you know, yes, videos can be time consuming and big projects and fairly big budgets, but actually absolutely make sure you've got a distribution budget in there as well to make sure the right people see it. You know, if it was, you know, that word that makes me shudder sometimes, viral. Viral, is it going to be going to the right people in the first place? So with, you know, obviously with programmatic, and it's great you talk about programmatic in your book, you know, it's, you know, showing a great amount of media knowledge there, and looking at the social channels you have access to and the paid hyper target you've got is, you know, it's absolutely key. Even if it's a little bit, make sure people get that, see that video, and then make the great content for that video do the rest.
Yeah, for sure.
Engage with it.
I mean, you know, like, so according to Google or YouTube, like, the creative quality, you know, creative storytelling, communication is responsible for about 75% of the effectiveness of a campaign. You know, so like, you if you take a poorly told story with like really heavy-handed marketing messages in it, you can give it as big a shove as you like. I mean, funny enough, you know, we're just going through the Democratic primaries at the minute in the US. You know, you look at, like, Michael Bloomberg has spent, you know, $500 million on marketing. And, you know, he's come up short, and the reason he's come up short is just because he just doesn't have, because the story's not right. you know, and so it sort of illustrates really clearly the limit. You know, yeah, you can spend a load of money on getting yourself out there, but if the story that you're getting out isn't quite right, you are going to end up on the rocks, unfortunately.
Because I mean, I follow American politics a little bit, and I kind of all of a sudden he just popped up, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I'd imagine when it comes to compare him against the likes of Joe Biden, but in particular Bernie Sanders, you know, that element of trust,
yeah,
you know, isn't there as much. So I imagine that's an issue as well. You can throw as much money as you wanted it, but if the message doesn't fulfill that,
well, you just, you know, like for you know, whatever the sort of like the political background of it is, like, you know, he just doesn't have the charisma. Like there's just not the charisma there to really carry it. And they say that Americans always vote for the person that you'd most like to have at a barbecue, have it as a sort of family Sunday afternoon barbecue. Anyway, we don't want to get too political, but you know, I think it's a really interesting, you know, for people working in digital marketing. You know, like no one has ever spent the kind of money that he has spent on, you know, blowing his trumpet from a political standpoint, and you know, he's come up short. So. Yeah, you know, like you've got to get the message right.
And what's your favorite top of the pops video that you've you know, what's the best video out there in terms of that really puts a smile on your face and you think is absolutely encompasses what you're talking about in your book?
I mean, there are some, you know, there's some fantastic stories. Those Netflix diversity films that you shared this morning, I thought were really excellent. You know, just because they're just so human, and video is, you know, I sort of talk in the book about like the amazing, like the power of empathy, and what science, like they used to think that like we were conditioned to feel empathy for people, you know, because we'd be like, oh, it feels bad, we want to try and solve that. Whereas what they found when they studied empathy was that actually we have mirror cells in our brain which make us directly feel the emotions or the circumstances of the story and the people that we see on screen. So if you know, if you're in a cave, if you're a caveman and you see someone out in the cold, you physically feel a little bit of what it's like to feel that cold. And there's just interesting, when I was researching for the book, I found this sort of psychoanalyst in Israel who had studied the brain chemistry of people watching films and found that their chemistry matches the chemistry of the people on screen. So she showed them intense psychological thrillers. She showed them Black Swan, amongst other films, and found that, you know, and sort of Natalie Portman, she's sort of training to be a ballerina, and she gets so sort of caught up in it, she starts having sort of psychotic episodes, schizophrenic episodes. And she found that like the brain chemistry of the people watching Natalie, and it's a fantastically made film, but the brain chemistry of the people watching the film mirrored someone having a minor schizophrenic episode. And so, sorry, to go back, you know, it's a very roundabout way of answering your question, but you know, the best films are the ones which are able to capture that emotion and really communicate it in a way that makes you feel that, like, makes you feel what the people on the screen are feeling. So when you watch, you know, like the Guinness Surfers, and I hate to sort of, well, I don't hate it because I think it's an absolutely amazing video. But like, you know, it's a bit of a cliche for someone to say, oh, well, you know, the greatest ad, you know, what was voted the greatest ad of the 20th century. But, you know, when you watch that, it's like, it's just pure exhilaration. You feel a bit like what it would feel like to be on the waves with the horse. You know, it's amazing. It's intense. And, you know, they managed to go back and go, okay, well, you know what, like we're saying Guinness is worth the wait. Ultimately, you know, it takes a long time, it takes a bit of time to put a Guinness. Let's actually make that a thing that we're going to talk about. And like, what is worth waiting? Absolute exhilaration.
Iconic video. That is iconic.
Absolutely iconic, and it's iconic because it just absolutely nails what is worth the wait. You know,
lovely. I'll drop the links in actually in the podcast description to those videos, those Netflix videos. if there's any others you think about, we'll drop them into the description. So
for sure. I mean, I think there are some really fantastic films out there. I think like I don't know if we kind of quite get onto sort of takeaways just yet or not, but like this, the one thing I would say is like there's just so much noise online that just having a video on your website just isn't enough anymore. And I sort of talk about it in the book, but like so often people look at Apple, and everyone wants to be Apple, but no one wants to be Steve Jobs.
I love that quote. That's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like everyone's, they look at Apple and they're like, wow, look at that. And you look at their margins, they've got incredible margins because they've just got this brand loyalty that is just off the charts. But Steve Jobs was uncompromised, absolutely uncompromising. And willing to be incredibly bold and say, you know what, no, I'm just going to do it. And some things worked and some things didn't, but that's fine because he was willing to take the risk. And I think, unfortunately, like corporate culture breeds real risk aversion because, you don't get ahead by putting your head above the parapet and, every so often getting it shot off and, and creative by its nature, sometimes you're going to have a barnstormer and sometimes it's going to, it's not going to be great and it's not going to work and that's fine. But, as long as you're learning from that process and you make the next one better, then it's all worth it. But yeah, corporate culture doesn't really or traditional corporate culture anyway, sort of like doesn't promote that kind of thinking.
I've found that over the years working on the most fun projects has been when clients have had that boldness, in their budgets and kind of a bit of boldness in the budget meeting or boardroom. But it's often about making sure that they feel comfortable in being bold, and likes of you and I, in the industry, just giving them what they need to build up that confidence to be bold. That boldness is really, really important. That Steve Jobs quote made me chuckle when I saw it. It's really good.
Yeah, I think just sort of really quickly on that, the great thing about us all having these platforms that we operate, whether it's on social or YouTube or on your own intranet, whatever it is like you can just try stuff. You don't have to. Once upon a time, not that long ago, people used to go, right, well, we're just going to do this massive splash and we're going to spend, 80, 100 grand on a brand film. We're just going to put it out and, damn the consequences or, fingers crossed, actually more sort of fingers crossed it works. Whereas now, you can iterate, put something out, see how it goes. Does it work? And then you can sort of start to kind of put your budget into the stuff that's really resonating and maybe sort of move it away from the stuff that isn't.
Is that thing about maybe deciding to go, let's put 10% or even 5% of budget towards something new, just then and test it. And we have the data available now to show if something is working or not. That's for sure. So kind of just to finish off, it's been great chatting with you. I could chat with you for much, much longer. But in terms of what piece of advice would do you want to give to my listeners, who's currently my mum, but I'm expected to get
I'm sure it will.
Would you give the listeners in terms of, I suppose, starting or cracking on to the next level in terms of video?
Yeah. So I think, obviously there's that sort of be bold thing, it's like there is... I really like there's this sort of metaphor of you should the best companies shoot bullets before they shoot cannonballs, in terms of innovation. So it's you just keep constantly shooting bullets in different directions, just trying to work out where the target is. And then once you hit the target, then you move on to the cannonballs. You don't need to be sort of one of the great things about the way being able to iterate, and I've just kind of just said this really, but just see what works. try like, 3 or 4 different treatments, and just like, what's resonating. Is it the really honest employee profiles? Is it maybe something that's more animated and maybe a bit more how to, and just sort of see what works and resonates, and then build on that.
It's true, actually. Even there can be this thing about wanting to get everything ready for a go live or launch.
Yeah,
and actually, if the campaign is 4 weeks long, or 2 months long, or 3 months long, or longer than that, there's time to actually produce content during the campaign.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think actually it's a nice way of making sure you're not putting too much pressure on all resources to get everything ready that doesn't necessarily go live all at the same time. So yeah, I think
yeah.
Great.
No, I like the sort of the idea of like this. That's kind of like the sort of the key shift, if you like, is the ability to iterate, and like it's rather than historically, you'd have like a big campaign launch and you're just blowing budget, just to get it out there when it first starts. Like I think now it's like it's a lot more subtle, and it's just like you're building an audience over time. Cadence is really important. I think it's sort of really overlooked, like the importance of sort of getting being regular with the content that you're sharing, and build on the successes and learn from the stuff which you're not quite where you don't succeed. And then we haven't even got on to the importance of purpose, but maybe that's one for next time.
Yeah, I think I've halfway through. I think there's maybe another episode in here.
Yeah, for sure, Chris.
Yeah,
it's been great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been really good, and you enjoy the rest of your sunny day in San Francisco, and I'm just going to pop out and pick up the kids in the rainy London. But
lovely.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining, and thanks for writing that book as well. And,
Chris, you're so welcome, and thank you so much. It's been great to chat, and we'll talk again soon.
Brilliant, and I'll drop a link into to Amazon to your website to link up to your book, which is
absolutely great.
Cheers, mate.
Nice one. Cheers, Chris. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow or subscribe for the latest episode drops. And don't forget to get in touch if you want to contribute.